What's that in the sky? Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Nah, it's the most recent TCG set, although you could be mistaken for thinking Latios is a jet, right? Hey guys, this is Gamer Cal, welcome to another Pokemon Trading Card Game History video. We're on Roaring Skies here, and a lot of people would say this is the set that ruined the TCG forever, even more so than Next Destinies, and whilst I don't agree with that per se, I do definitely see where it's coming from, and we kind of have to just get it out of the way early. Normally I would talk about like the trainers in here and then go through the Pokemon and stuff in order, but we have to go through the hedgehog-sized elephant in the room here, and that is talking about Shaymin. And we're going to talk about it in the context of Trump Card up here as well, because we actually have a banning for this. We're not going to showcase the format before this got banned, because it is just gross and unplayable, and it ruined several regional championships as well as the UK Nationals as well. Look up the Seismitoad Shaymin decks basically and see just how bad it got. But we'll go over the sort of why at the very least, because this card, well, it fundamentally changed the TCG and how they design stuff going forward as well. And you see it even into Paldea Evolved, just how much stuff changed because of this thing. So, Shaymin is a 110 HP 2-prize colorless Pokemon with a really strong ability and a pretty solid attack too. It is weak to lightning, so Mega Manectric can kill it even if you don't put a tool attached to it. That's kind of interesting, but it has the setup ability, kind of exactly like how Uxie did. It lets you draw until you have 6 cards in your hand when you bench it. Uxie drew up to 7, what's the problem with that, right? It's only a 1-prize Pokemon and everything. It's the format that we're in. We have so many turbo items as well as just massively playable, hugely swingy things to go through. Uxie didn't have to deal with stuff like Crushing Hammer. Super Scoop Up wasn't particularly great in that sort of format. We didn't have to deal with Bicycle, Acrobike in Trainer's Mailers in this set too, which we'll go over in a bit. It is very possible to go through your entire deck in one turn with playing enough of these things, and it's just gross. It enables too much. There's like Battle Compressor is another thing as well. We're going to see a lot of these cards anyway because they are obviously very strong and that's how it goes, but there's a problem with being able to go through your deck too quickly, and that comes in with Lysander's Trump Card. This card was printed in the same set as Night March because it was seen as a balancing act. Night March is a ridiculously powerful deck that does damage based on the number of Pokemon with Night March in your discard pile as a full-on one-prizer thing. They are ultra dinky Pokemon, so they do get knocked out basically every turn, but they are capable of one-shotting pretty much any Pokemon in the format if you give them the chance, and it's very consistent with everything we have here and now. So, this was printed as a balancing act. It shuffles everything except itself from the discard piles back into the deck. And that means no Night March is in the discard. Talking is difficult. No Night March is in the discard, and therefore no damage next turn. They have to try and set up all over again. And if they spent all of their Shaymins, they're on the bench and whatnot, well, maybe they can't do that anymore. But the problem is, it allows for a ton of other stupid stuff to happen as well. Mostly with item lock, which is the main way that Night March loses anyway. If you can trump card them with Seismitoad and then, in the active and then Quaking Punch them, they pretty much can't win from there. It is effectively just an auto loss, but it's more than just that. Trump card putting all the item stuff back into the deck means that you can reuse all of those Crushing Hammers, all of those Super Scoop Up to try and get more Shaymin procs, etc. It's stupid. Hypnotoxic Laser is another one as well. You should not be able to reuse all of those resources every single turn. Think how stupid Sableye was in a lot of the matches that we played, and that is an attack that didn't even cost colorless energy, that took 2 items back, and then if the opponent ends, you didn't have those items still. It was absolutely absurd and was one of the strongest cards of the formats that it was in. It was ridiculous. Just imagine that, but on 15, 16, 20 items every single turn. That's effectively what this represented. It was completely unfun, and we're not going to entertain it, to be honest. We thought about it, and then we realized it's just going to be Seismitoad and Trevenant mirrors, and that's pretty much it. Or some miserable Executor thing to prevent supporters or whatever. It's just not worth it. It's not worth our effort. Shaymin does have a second attack as an attack here, so second thing going for it, kind of like what Yuxi did. Remember, Yuxi for one colorless did 20 damage, and you may put Yuxi and all cards attached to it to the bottom of the deck. Shaymin does 30 damage for a double colorless, and then it forces itself and all cards attached to it back into the hand. This means that it not only takes the liability off the board, but you also get to play the Shaymin down again next turn if you need to draw cards, if you don't want to discard it for like Ultra Ball or a Juniper or something. It also means you keep the double colorless, so it can't get enhanced hammered, which is pretty good. And there actually are decks that will just play Sky Return Turbo. There's a Shaymin Trevenant deck that comes out not even just because of this set, but like obviously Shaymin's a huge deal, being able to bounce back to the hand, and then the Trevenant stops item cards getting played. Very, very nasty combo. So yeah, there's the main sort of history behind the whole Shaymin trump card thing, and it's rough, honestly. I do really like the alternate artwork here, but I won't be using this one because it's just too busy. It feels like a Rayquaza card that just has Shaymin in the front for some reason. It doesn't actually feel like a Shaymin card, so even though the artwork is very beautiful, I personally will not be using this one. Maybe the others will, who knows. But I think we all kind of just agreed. The one thing I don't like about playing like regular stuff in here, it just feels less distinct, I suppose, when we get the chance to play full arts, but I'm also not a huge fan of this full art, I'll be honest. The background is nice, but the yellow on the Shaymin just looks ugly. I've railed against that too much in the past though. Whatever. We do have some promos that came out here as well. I might as well go over those because like one of them is relevant, one of them is potentially relevant later. The other two unfortunately don't get megas with spirit links, so blah. Regirock is pretty cool. It's got the Omega Barrier trait, so it's the same sort of thing as what Groudon was. You could search it with the same sort of stuff as well. Prevents Lysander being used on it, prevents the Crushing Hammer stuff being used on it, so this is used as a one-of in Fairy Box decks in order to transfer all your energy to it, preserve it in play. The opponent can't touch that energy, so you just get to stockpile it for whenever you need it, which is pretty good. It does have 2 attacks, as you can see. 1 fighting energy, put 2 stadiums from your discard pile into your hand. You could maybe do this as a one-of in Groudon decks if you're playing too many things that just like delete stadiums, I suppose. Oh, not even that. It's like if you don't play that many stadiums but you still want to do the Groudon thing, you just need space for someone else. Regirock could be the thing. Stone Edge is a really expensive attack to play for free fighting in the colorless. You only do 80, but if you flip heads it does 40, and it is in fighting, so fighting stadium, strong energy, etc, etc. You can get it to do reasonable numbers, and Wasi did tout this as a deck for quite a while. I think it might have been for expanded, but because you can focus sash with this, there is potential for this to see play in healy sort of decks as well. It's interesting, mostly because of the trait, but yeah, no, I'm probably not going to play it because I'm not going to play Fairy Box, but if I was, yeah, it's reasonable. Sceptile-EX is the other one that might see play later on, as I personally prefer the other Sceptile-EX that we get, but I can totally see why you would play this one. For 170 HP, 1 retreat cost EX here is kind of nice. Agility for 1 grass does 20, and the usual agility thing. If you flip heads, it prevents you from taking anything from the opponent's attack next turn. They've got to gust you out if they want to do stuff, or play like a swift attack, I suppose. And Strong Slash for 3 grass does 130, but it can't be used consecutively. Free grass is more expensive than what the Mega Sceptile we'll get later on uses, so that's why I'm not a huge fan of this one. But sometimes agility is going to be your ticket to like buying an early turn or something, so I can see it. I'm just not as big a fan. The other two unfortunately don't have anything going for them. Swampert EX is intriguing at the very least because Mud Flood is a cool attack, if nothing else. Water double colors to do 40, you reveal the top 4 of your deck, and you do 40 more for every water energy you find there. We do get Energy Recycler pretty soon, so you could do some similar things to how Lost Box Kyogre plays nowadays, but even at its best, it's like if you reveal 4 waters, you're doing 200, which is a heck of a lot, but it's not enough to one-shot Megas, right? Muscle Band, I suppose you could, but for 3 energy, to do that seems a bit awkward. And the Blaziken is just outclassed by Charizard. 1 fire, 3 colorless is the main attack here that does 100, and for every fire energy you have on you, flip a coin, do 20 more per heads. So if you put 4 fire energy on this thing, which is already more costly to do than what the Charizard would do, you're averaging 140 damage. The Charizard just does Blacksmith plus DCE for 150, which is better than this anyway. These do get Megas in the future, but because they're promos, they don't get Spirit Links. Not every promo Mega does, but we'll go over them when they come out. I think it's like 2 sets time or something that they come out, so yeah. Alright, trainer time. Reprint-wise, we get Revive reprinted in here, which is pretty cool. So Night March actually does play 1 of this normally. You could play 2, because sometimes running out of Night Marches is a problem, but usually you only see the 1. And then we have reprints of Ultra Ball and Switch coming in this as well. So Ultra Ball is staying evergreen for quite a while. It does go away eventually, but not for a long time. So yeah, good stuff. The other trainers, our Megas this round are Gallade, Latios, and Rayquaza, so we have Spirit Links for each of those. And then the other tool we have right here is Healing Scarf. Whenever you attach an energy from your hand to this Pokemon, you heal 20 damage. Not great, to be honest with you. We are losing quite a lot of our rotations happening after this set as well, because it is the Worlds format. We're losing quite a lot of our cards that accelerate from hand, you know, Emboar, Blastoise, that sort of thing. But we do get a Magnezone, I suppose, that you could use for that, but using your tool slot for this just isn't great, to be fair. So yeah, not super thrilled with that. Mega Turbo is pretty good. You attach your basic energy from your discard pile to one of your Mega Evolution Pokemon. So we'll see later on the flagship of this set is Rayquaza, and it takes 3 colorless energy to do its thing. So Mega Turbo plus a DCE would get it going in 1 turn. And honestly, this can be used in a ton of decks, right? Gardevoir would have really liked this. Groudon decks can turbo with this if they want to. So some of the stuff we did last week, really, where we played all the Megas from there, right? You might not use it for Aggron because you've got acceleration from the discard, but you could. It's not bad. So yeah. In case you forgot what Revive does, it puts a basic from your discard pile onto your bench, so it doesn't take damage or anything when you do that, so that's pretty great. Skyfield is our big stadium from this one. Our support from this set is Colorless and Dragon, because Rayquaza is Dragon Flying, right? So that's what it's a Rayquaza set. And Skyfield really helps with the Colorless Rayquaza that we'll talk about in a little bit. Each player can have 8 Pokemon on their bench. If the stadium gets bounced, then your bench goes back down to 5 and you discard Pokemon until you get there. We actually have, because of this in Eternatus, we have on our board a very special large bench button down here, which adds 3 extra slots, and then you can remove it again as well. Creates a nice little pyramid look here, which I do appreciate, and yeah, I've called it the Rayquaza pyramid scheme when I've attacked with this because it's pretty funny, but it's cool. Like, just being able to do that on this board is one more amazing thing as to why this mod is so fantastic. Thank you so much, Pepper, for all the work you've done with this. And yeah, I like it. That's all there is to say. Skyfield is going to be pretty big. One of my favorite cards from the last little bit was the Raichu. Haven't really had a chance to use it yet, but Circle Circuit doing 20 for every bench Pokemon you have is super cool, and Skyfield helps that immensely, so very good. Steven is a new supporter that I, for some reason, have seen in the next set after rotation. I don't really know why. Search it out for a supporter and a basic energy, put them into hand. It's Worse Castaway and Cyrus's Conspiracy as the thing. I don't like it, I'll be honest with you, but I guess if you are super bricking, you could, but I mean, we're in a format that has Battle Compressor plus VS Seeker. Do you really need this kind of thing to be a supporter that you're going for? I highly doubt it. Professor's Letter is also in format too, so if you want to search energy, you can just do that. I don't think it's good, but hey. One thing that is really good though is Trainer's Mail, and this absolutely gorgeous alt art from the collection set later on that is going to be beautiful to play with. Never had the chance to play with this one because the collection didn't come out until this rotated, I think. So, very, very nice. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal a trainer card you find there, except for Trainer's Mail, and put it into the hand. Shuffle the rest back into the deck. This says Trainer, obviously, which means it can be item, supporter, or stadium card. You can get whichever type of thing you want. Looking only 4 deep can sometimes make it whiff, but remember that most decks in this format are at the very least half trainer cards, right? Most decks are between 30 and 40 trainer cards right now, depending on what they're actually playing. And yeah, you're generally going to hit something. Whether it's going to be the thing you need is another question, of course, but it's just consistency. Luckily, it can't get itself, which is probably the main thing that stops it from being outright broken, because imagine just chaining this thing, right, without having multiples in hand. Absolutely dumb, but it gets everything. It could get you a Juniper if that's what you pick up, it could get you the VS Seeker, it could get you Battle Compressor to do the thing, it can get you the Stadium Bounce, you could get Skyfield with this thing. So yeah, expect to see this in any deck that's trying to go fast and set up a strong game plan turn 1, which is most decks. We're not quite Yu-Gi-Oh tier here, but we're getting close, I will admit. Wally is another interesting supporter card. Interesting in quotes. This has a storied history at the very least. It's very, very similar to Wally's training from all the way back in Sandstorm, actually, except it's slightly more restricted because it cannot be used on EXs. You get to evolve from deck one of your non-EX Pokemon in play. So you can't get Megas with this, but you can go ahead and just evolve to Trevenant straight away, which is the annoying thing. The reason this is useful, despite being a supporter when Evo Soda exists, is because you can play this on the first turn or the turn that Pokemon was put into play. That's what ends up breaking it. Right now, like I said, Trevenant is the biggest example of a thing you would do with it, but you can play other things with this as well if you want to. But yeah, it's mostly a Trevenant thing. And getting turn 1 Trevenant before the opponent gets to play is very irritating, to say the least. Yeah, it's tough, But the main, I guess, good thing about... Well, no, the story, it's not even a good thing. It's a storied history of this, because Trevenant eventually did get it banned and expanded during Generation 7, I believe, where they were on a bit of a tirade when it came to, like, locking before the opponent got to do stuff on a bunch of mons. And yeah, this was the thing that ended up being seen as the problem for that. That and Forest of Giant Plants we'll get into next set. But then Generation 8 came in, and you are no longer able to play supporters going first. And that was enough for them to unban this card and expand it. Because going first item lock before the opponent had a chance to play a card was the bit that they didn't want. So yeah. Right now, we don't have that restriction, though, so play it to your heart's content. Kinda sucks to say, but you know, whatever. Wide Lens is the last tool card that we have here. This allows you to hit for weakness and resistance on the opponent's bench. Funny that you can hit resistance as well, I guess. That's not a good thing, but oh well. Mostly, I think this would be usable for Landorus. Being able to hammerhead the opponent's bench for weakness is pretty good. I would have said Kyurem, Frost Spears, but I don't think that's particularly good at hitting weakness right now, because most of the stuff it would hit is not meta because it's weak to Seismitoad, and you don't want to give Seismitoad 100 damage a turn, it's 50 is good enough. Yeah, the main bench sniper in this set can't hit for weakness because it's a dragon type, so that's unfortunate, but maybe something in the future could take advantage of this. I don't actually remember. I seem to remember this being used like once, but not in a meta deck, if that makes sense. Yeah, I'd have to have a look through. It's been a while. And then we have Winona as the last actual trainer here. Search your deck for up to 3 colors Pokemon, reveal them, put them into hand, blah blah blah. Usually Pokemon search on a supporter is not that great, but this gets you Shaymin. So if you're playing a deck with a colorless attacker, aka please play Rayquaza, it's the new hotness, please, please, please. Yeah, you could use Winona and search yourself out like 2 Rays and a Shaymin. Or if you've got a Spirit Link in hand, you could search Ray and Mega Ray Shaymin. So yeah, it's pretty solid. As far as dragons, dragon support, it's mostly in the Pokemon, but we do have the one really good energy for dragons. Double Dragon Energy is double Rainbow, but only on dragon Pokemon. You can only attach it to dragons as well, so that can be problematic in other decks sometimes, if you're playing non-dragon type stuff as well, which you probably will be. Yeah, this card is obviously really good. A lot of people want it to be evergreen, and I'm kind of in agreement, but not always. I think certain formats would be even worse if this was evergreen. I'm thinking specifically stuff like Arceus, Dialga, Palkia would be completely unfathomable if this card was in format with them as well. So I'm kind of glad it wasn't evergreen, but dragon types do often need a lot of support because they just don't do enough to justify their double energy costs. So I don't know, I think it could pick and choose its formats, and maybe it would be okay, like say right now, but then again Giratina's in format right now, so maybe not. It's hard to say. I like the card, but I don't think it should be in every format, and I'm kind of glad it isn't. Let's talk about the Pokemon, and before we go into the main stuff here, I do want to go over the major archetype of this set, which is the Rayquaza. So we'll start with the colorless thing. There is a dragon type one as well, and you'll occasionally see like a one-of this Rayquaza in the archetype because it has slightly more HP. I think that's the only reason you would play it, but maybe also because it's not weak to lightning. Mega Manectric is a problem for the Rayquaza deck since everything's weak to lightning. But there's a support card that deals with that, so I don't like it personally, but I could see maybe why. Anyway, this Rayquaza, the good one, has got 170 HP, it's a colorless type, so it searches with Winona, and the 2 energy retreat, that's fine, it works out. Not the best, not the worst, but its attacks are relatively good for an evolving EX. Intensify and Burn for 1 colorless does 10, plus 50 if the opponent is an EX, so it can 2-shot stuff like Shaymin, as much as that doesn't really matter, but like 60 is a decent early chip if you have to attack with this thing, and it's fine, right? It's the same sort of thing as what Victini did, and that's good for 1 colorless energy. Dragon Pulse for 3 colors does 100 and discards the top 3 cards of your own deck. That's probably too heavy of a downside to justify attacking with this, but again, if you can't find a Mega Ray or you can't find a Spirit Link to prevent yourself from losing a turn, you might have to do this. I guess put a Muscle Band on it and it does kill Shaymin, so there is that going for it. Yeah, it's decent. But what it really has is the Mega to go into. So the ancient traits this time are Delta based because of course the Delta episode, right? This is a Mega Ruby Alpha Sapphire time after all. Mega Rayquaza is a 220 HP colorless with only 1 retreat now, and it has the Delta Evolution ability, which allows it to evolve the turn that you play the Rayquaza down. So you can just put Rayquaza down, Mega Evolve it immediately. If you don't have a Spirit Link, that does end your turn, but going first, you might end up doing that anyway. And if you do have the Spirit Link, then you can just keep playing, and that's where this card really shines. For 3 colorless energy, Emerald Break does 30 for every benched Pokemon you have. It's a bigger form of the Raichu, which is very nice to be honest. So without Skyfield, this caps at 150, which is not a terrible number. Like, you're 220 HP on this guy, so you're not dying immediately, so that's kind of okay. But if you put Skyfield in play and you can get 8 basic Pokemon, or 8 Pokemon in general, onto your bench, that does 240 damage, which is enough to one-shot everything, right? You need like a hard-charmed Primal Groudon to survive that, or Shield Energy Mega Aggron, or something stupid like that. So yeah, it can be a one-hit KO machine, and that is ridiculous. The disadvantages are pretty numerous with this though, and this archetype really didn't see a lot of success until 2017. of all things, which is kind of wild to think about. The main disadvantage is it's weak to lightning, and there are quite a few good lightning attackers at the moment, and there are going to be more lightning attackers going through, but just to name the main three, we have Joltik, we have Manectric, and we have Raichu. All of them are capable of one-shotting this thing. Raichu needs a bit more help, but Skyfield is going to be in play, so you are going to give them that help, so that's unfortunate. The other thing is that you have to play a ton of Shaymin, because this deck sets up fast and like lives or dies fast, right? And if you play a ton of Shaymin down and the opponent can just snipe those instead, it doesn't matter how tanky or Ray Quasar is, right? You just lose anyway, because they get taking 2 prizes off your Shaymins all the time. So it's a very awkward deck, to say the least, but it is a very cool one, and there are some different ways you can play it. I think the top 8 list from, was it US Nationals? I think it was US Nationals from what I was reading, played lesser line of the Ray and played it as like a Metal Box deck, just with the opportunity to play Ray as well. So like that could possibly work. And obviously it's an incredibly powerful card, and there's so much support for it here, right? With Mega Turbo and DCE, you can get it going in 1 turn. With its own Delta Evolution ability, you can get it going in 1 turn as well. So it is very easy to just swing for 150 plus damage going second on your very first turn. It's incredible how powerful the card can be, actually. So yeah, definitely don't sleep on it, but temper expectations. We will be seeing it, I'm sure, but it doesn't win as many matchups as you would like right now. That's just because it gets hated out so much, to be honest. The main support that it has in terms of dealing with lightning is the Altaria. This is a pretty good tech if you are playing the pure colorless sort of build, which I'm currently not. I'm playing it with Raichu, but that's because I like the Raichu. What can I say? Altaria as a colorless Pokemon also has the Delta Evolution ability, and it has 90 HP, which is going to be relevant for Level Ball coming back pretty soon. And the Clear Humming ability, you might recognize this on Dunsparce right now. Each of your colorless Pokemon in play has no weakness. So all of the lightning weakness stuff that we have here disappears once you play the Altaria down. And Winona can search the Altaria parts as well. She did use an Altaria in the games, so it makes sense that she'd have a little bit of synergy with that. So yeah, if you play pure colorless, this is a really solid way of going about it. Now, for the rest of the Pokemon, we'll go in rough order here. There's an anti-colorless Pokemon in Exeggutor, but it doesn't do nearly enough for that. For, 120 HP is not going to survive anything. Shake It Off only does 20 damage for every colorless the opponent has in play. If it was every colorless Pokemon in play, then you could probably justify using this, because you gotta remember, like, Execute is 30 or 40 HP, which is just nothing. It's really, really hard to keep this on the bench. And yeah, the max it's going to do to even an aggressive Shaymin board is like 60 damage. It literally has to be going up against Ray, and it can kind of trade with many Ray decks, but again, not every one of them is pure colorless as well, so yeah, it's unfortunate. It just doesn't do nearly enough for that sort of payout. If it was 40 times, I think we'd be talking, but it's not, so yeah. Beautifly, we are losing Safeguarders in the next thing, so Beautifly's Miraculous Scales preventing damage done to it by EXs is at least interesting. Unfortunately, the Wurmple and Silcoon do not have Adaptive Evolution like Caterpie and Metapod do, so we can't really get into this very easily, and its attack is really bad. So yeah, the fact of it's a stage 2 that doesn't do anything into Night March really, and has a terrible attack to go with that because it's grass double colors, blech. Like, how are you powering that up, right? It's unfortunately not going to be that useful, but still cool. Dustox shows off the other main Delta trait that we have here, Delta Plus. When the Delta Plus Pokemon KOs an opponent's Pokemon by damage, it takes an additional prize card. So very much like Lugia's power from the Plasma set. However, this Dustox is the worst at taking prizes. It's absolutely unbelievable. 20 damage for 1 grass energy on a stage 2. That's a basic Pokemon's attack, right? We've been doing that kind of attack since Rocket with, or even no, since the base set, right? Base set Hitmonchan does that. Really? 1 grass double colorless to do 50, but only to one of the opponent's bench Pokemon. Yeah, so maybe if you could somehow get wide lands on, you could two-shot Seismitoads on the bench, but how? Against Seismitoad, how? And also, it can't even hit the active Toad, so it is completely useless. Shedinja is kind of interesting because it actually had a deck in the non-trump card ban format, but Ninjask is also kind of funny here. If it's active, you can discard a card from your hand and then mill the top card of the opponent's deck. Not very powerful, obviously. We did have Durant that was the one good like mill deck. Well, that and Flygon, right? But that was forever ago. And its After Image Assault attack is at least cool. Grass Colorless to do 30 and search your deck for up to 2 Ninjask and bench them, so you don't have to play Nincada down for those ones. But nah, just obviously not good enough for it. We can't switch multiple times per turn. If we could, maybe you could do that, right? Because you've got 0 retreat, so if we could retreat multiple times in a turn, mill like 4 cards out of the opponent's deck, discard stuff you don't need, it would be kind of cool, but it's just never going to be there. Shedinja is funny because it's a 30 HP stage 1, where the Nincada actually has 40 HP, so that automatically is a bit weird, you don't normally see that, but it's because of the Hopeless Scream attack. For 1 colorless energy, you do 50 damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. There are 2 synergy stuffs you can do with this. The first is Frozen City or Team Magma Secret Base, depending on whether you're benching the Nincada for Secret Base or attaching the energy to Shedinja with the Frozen City. You can put 2 damage counters in both cases onto the Pokemon. So you have the maximum you could put on Shed, and that gives it an okay amount, right, to do. It's like 100 for 1, but it does still give up a prize, which is the big thing. It'd probably be too strong if it didn't, but I feel like for this kind of thing, you really need a Life Dew effect in order to make it work. Curse Drain is at least a funny attack, but again, not for 30 HP stage 1. 1 grass energy, put a damage counter on each of the opponent's Pokemon, and then switch it with your bench. Okay, but it's so easy just to pick off. It's like 1 Crobat kills this, which is sad, and Bats is a very, very popular archetype, so it's never going to see play. The other thing you can do with this is you can copy it with Mew-EX, and that actually makes it a substantial attack, but you're still leaving a 30 HP liability in play, and yeah, it's just rough. Mew is also a 120 HP 2 prizes, so you put some damage counters on that, you're guaranteed to give up 2 prizes next turn. Yeah. At least if Dimension Valley was in play, you could then use it for 0. That's pretty cool, right? Articuno is nice. It has the Ancient trait, Delta Plus, and this does actually see play. It's why Archie Stories won Worlds, because this is really good against Night March in particular. 120 HP, so a little bit frail for legendary stuff like this, even if it is 1 prize. 2 attacks. 1 Water Energy, it does just Auto Sleep. Okay. 2 water on the colorless, it does 20, so absolutely terrible, but you flip 3 coins, and for each heads that you flip, you do 40 more damage. So if you get it so that the opponent is 60 HP or less left, 80 if you include Muscle Band, then 7 times out of 8 you are going to KO them with this, and take multiple prizes for it. That's the goal that you want to go for. You can sometimes high roll it, right, and say Muscle Band 2 heads, KO Shaymin, and that would take 3 prizes, and that'd be great. But most of the time you're looking to do 60, and that just so happens to be exactly where you need to be for killing Night March. That's what makes this reasonable in the first place. You play it with Archie because you can both attach to it with Blastoise and potentially play Archie's Ace in the Hole to recover this back when the opponent KOs it. It's a single prizer, so yeah, it's pretty solid. Unfortunately, not very good after rotation, I don't think, but it was a staple of expanded Blastoise for a long time, so yeah, good card. I don't want to mention the Moltres, the Zapdos even. Moltres isn't even in this set. Talonflame is though, but I don't even want to mention this, but I have seen a Manectric Zapdos thing. I think it was in Juniors that it did pretty well. I would say just play Yveltal. I know it's not lightning, but it does the same sort of thing. It does resist fighting, that's probably the big thing why you would use it for a lightning deck, but it's not great. 120 HP, 2 retreat, 20 for 1 as its basic attack here, and then Raging Thunder for 2 lightning and a colorless does 120, but it also does 40 to one of your bench. Unfortunately, the way Protection Cube is worded, you cannot prevent bench damage done to the Pokemon it's attached to by something else. So yeah, the fact of it can't hit itself, so you wouldn't even be able to do Protection Cube on itself is annoying. You can play Mr. Mime to prevent this damage, and that might not be a bad idea in general, but then you're clogging up the bench with that. I kind of get it, 120 on a 1-prizer for free energy is respectable, but I seriously think just playing the Yveltal is better. Yeah, it only does 100, but it also has an acceleration attack that synergizes with Manectric, and you get to play Shadow Circle to prevent weakness, which is good for that deck, and just, yeah, it's so much better. Just don't bother with this, in my opinion. Speaking of stuff not to bother with, Thundurus-EX is really, really bad this time. 170 HP, 2 retreat, so on the worst end of stuff that way. Headlock for 1 lightning and the colorless does 30, if you flip heads it does 60, if you flip tails it's 30 plus paralysis. Very much like an Ampharos attack actually, to be honest. But yeah, just like not great for that sort of thing, right? It's unreliable is the problem. And then Voltage Rush for 3 lightning does 150, but it also does 50 to itself. So then you're left with a 120 HP 2-prizer after you do that attack. You can Protection Cube it, but then you can't Muscle Band it, so it can't get one-shots, and you can sort of see the problem here. Being weak to fighting as an EX is also terrible unless you are exactly Manectric, because it means that you could possibly get one-shot by a 1-energy Lucario or something here as well. And God forbid you go against Landorus with this thing. Miserable card. Natu is a pretty funny meme. It's got Delta Plus, so it does take extra prizes if it KOs something, and it is in Psychic, so you could Dimension Valley away the colorless in its attack cost, because Psywave for 1 Psychic and the colorless does 10 for every energy on the opponent's active. So it's like an infinitely worse version of Articuno, basically, but it can attack for 1 energy, and it is only 40 HP, so I guess if you could somehow... you'd have to do some really crazy, like, Gourgeist... Basically my Gourgeist plus, what's his face, Fortress and like Dustoir and stuff, right? Or maybe in a bat-focused deck you could set the numbers up for it, but the opponent's gotta have energy on there as well, and it just, nah. It's so specific. Random Bleh. I love the attack of this thing, just the name of it, it's funny. The artwork's pretty cute too, so don't mind to shop it, but the Bannettes are actually worth talking about as well, both of them here. The 80 HP one without an ancient trait has no good attack, but it does have tool concealment, so it prevents any tool in play from having an effect. So that's kind of cool. You can block Spirit Links and stuff from doing things, you can prevent Muscle Band from doing extra damage, Hard Charm I guess would be the other one that's mostly used, so that's neat. You could Wally I guess for this, but I think you'd probably just rather do that for Trevenant. But hey, it stops Floatstone as well, so that's nice. I don't hate it, I just don't know how you're consistently getting into play before the opponent puts like too much pressure on you or something, I guess. The other Banette has Delta Evolution, so maybe if these were swapped would be really nice, but 90 HP Delta Evolution so you can evolve it straight away, and that's good because Evolution Jammer works to prevent the opponent from evolving from their hand next turn. 20 damage to 1 Psychic, the opponent can't evolve from their hand to any of their Pokemon next turn. The fact that it's not just the active means that it can't be disabled by just switching, which is really good, and yeah, it's also kind of nice at stopping Megas from doing the thing. Problem is it's only 90 HP, right, and not every deck plays Evolutions, so yeah, it's a very specific tech that probably isn't going to see play. If anything, Tool Concealment is going to see more play, so maybe look out for this one, I don't know. Deoxys is interesting. Like the Latios in this set, if you go first you are allowed to use the first attack on the card. 110 HP, 1 retreat, pretty solid. Dimension Valley works with both first attacks here. For 1 colorless you just draw 2. but again, if you go first, you're allowed to use that on turn 1, so a little bit of extra consistency never really hurts. And then Overdrive Smash for 1 Psychic and a Colorless does 30, but if this stays in the active by the time your next turn comes into play, it does 60 more on the next turn. So 30, then 90, etc, etc. Just stays at 90 for that time. It's fine. If you're playing Dimension Valley, you could use the second attack for 1 energy, and that's not terrible. Using the first attack for nothing is quite good at that point. Pepper did point out to me that then you maybe have a hard time retreating it, but I think you could probably work around that, to be honest. It's totally possible, but probably won't see play for us because it's just kind of there, I guess. If we experimented with it, maybe it'd be alright, I don't know. Gallade gets a couple of cards here because we do have the Mega as well. We had that promo Gallade before, but it wasn't super great. I think this one is just better for the most part. 170 HP is still kind of annoying, but Swift Lunge and Piercing Prizes can be pretty good attacks in the right situation. For 1 Psychic and a Colorless, you do 30 with Swift Lunge, and you can force the opponent to switch, which can be pretty disruptive. And then for 3 Psychic Energy, Piercing Prizes does 50, plus 20 for every prize card that you have remaining. So at the start of the game, it would do 170, but it is for 3 Psychic Energy, which is a lot to ask for. The first attack is good with Dimension Valley, so you might get to use that early on, and Dimension Valley works with a Mega Gallade too. You got to 220 HP, so the average for Megas, and its Unwavering Blade for 2 Psychic and a Colorless does 110, and then 30 to each of the opponent's bench that have any damage counters on them. This is very close to being decent, to be honest. With Dimension Valley, that becomes 2 Psychic, so that's playable at that point. Mega Turbo can be used with it at this stage, so you can get some decent acceleration off of that. And there are multiple ways that you could build a deck that puts damage counters on the opponent's bench. There's the Golbat Crobat line, obviously, that can do stuff. Remember, Golbat's Swoop Across attack can actually be nice for that as well. There is the Fortress that I played with Gourgeist that lets you put the damage counter on the opponent's Pokemon, like when you evolve into it, so that's kind of cool. Gourgeist itself is in Psychic and could potentially work with this too. As an attack, 2 damage counters on each of the opponent's Pokemon for 1 Psychic, so that's pretty cool. And then there's also, for this format only, there is Dust Noir that lets you then move the damage counters around as well. So if you can't get the first one to do a ton of extra damage, that's fine, because the next one you can guarantee doing the spread hit. It's fine. The problem is, the problems are kind of multiple with this thing. It's Psychic Weak, which is really bad into Night March. It takes a lot of setup to get the best out of it, and it's still possible for the opponent to manipulate around it too, so I don't think it's going to be good enough. I haven't tried to build the deck yet, and I probably won't, but it was on my mind as something that you could play at this sort of time. I never saw any success, obviously, so a bit of a hard one to work around. Gliscor is potentially a way that you could build it as well, because fighting for 1 Colorless, this 90 HP stage 1 does 20 and 20 to 2 of the opponent's bench, so you could set some numbers up with that as well. It's fine, but not really good enough to justify when you could just play Gourgeist instead, I think. Absol is cracked in this set though. One of my favorite ones, and I mean Absol-EX is basically what this came from, so of course I'm gonna love it. 100 HP, 1 Prizer that lets you move 3 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another when you play it from hand to bench. Its attack is nothing to speak on. We can't all have like Psychic Pulse, I guess, so that's fine. It's mostly there as a one-of that will steal games by being able to move damage where the opponent doesn't expect it. Think of stuff like Manectric, or even Landorus potentially at the moment, right? But Manectric is a pretty big one for this, where your first attack does 20 and 20. If you could then shift that 2 damage counters to the active, you could potentially score a knockout the opponent's not expecting. Or you can always do what I did with Empoleon Dust Noir and like move damage away so that you're not overkilling the opponent by quite as much. Very, very good card, definitely worth noting. Togekiss is a very intriguing card because it has Delta Evolution, but the problem is it's a stage 2 with Delta Evolution, and unfortunately that leads to some big problems. First off, Togepi's only got 40 HP, so we're in a big disadvantage there. But the main thing is that Togetic does not have Delta Evolution. This means that you cannot go from Togepi to Togekiss in the turn that you bench Togepi. Rare Candy specifically says that you cannot evolve on the turn that you bench the Pokemon, so that overrides Delta Evolution. Which means you are, at minimum, waiting a turn to get this Togekiss into play. And that's just too slow. I played this sort of thing with Ho-Oh because it's very similar, actually. You look at the top 8 cards of your deck, the old one was 10. Look at the top 8 cards of your deck when you evolve into this thing. Any energy cards you find there, basic energy specifically, get attached to your Pokemon in any way that you like. It looks 2 cards, shallower than it used to, and it's a lot harder to play now because we don't have Rare Candy being able to do it immediately. So, yeah, card is obviously not very good, but it was, like, pretty close, right? If you could evolve into this immediately, I think it'd be alright. The Dragonites are the next sort of interesting bit here. There's a lot of Dragon Pokemon in this set. As I said, it's one of the main types that's supported here. This Dragonite, when you evolve into it, fully heals one of your Pokemon. We actually have Arboliva right now, I think, that does the same thing. Obviously doesn't see play, but yeah, it's just unfortunate. Being at stage 2, evolving from a 50 HP Dratini as well is big, because that means Muscle Banded Sky Return one-shots this thing, and that's really bad. So yeah, only having 50 HP for the Dratini just makes it completely unusable. I think there's a 60 HP one that's rotating from Plasma Freeze, because there's like Dragonite from there could get played, but yeah, this isn't going to work. And the attack is just really bad, to be honest, so we're never going to play it for that. Shame, because the artwork is really cool. But the main one is this Dragonite here, 160 HP with the Delta Plus ability. This is the biggest guy that has the extra prize taking thing. It's a 4 retreat mon, so absolutely ginormous that way. But it's got 2 attacks, one of which is unfortunate because it keeps the stuff active. 1 lightning energy, attach up to 2 basic energy from your hand to this Pokemon. Barf, I really wish you could attach it to bench instead, but yeah, it's just gonna keep that energy and it's gonna be a sitting duck next turn, and I don't know what you're doing with that energy at that point, but yeah, it's unfortunate. For 3 grass energy, a lightning and a colorless, heavy impact does 150. Now what I will say for this is that 150 takes out basically any one prizer, and of course it can take out Shaymin, right, as the main thing. If you take out 1 prizes, you are turning them into EXs, which is nice. If you take out a Shaymin, that's a free prize swing, which is really cool. But it's 5 energy. I know it's not even DC compatible. I know we have double dragon energy in this set, but how are you getting this on there? Manectric is fine, but it doesn't want this many grass in Manectric. Virizion takes 2 energy itself, so it's just, yeah, I don't understand how you're powering it up. And God forbid it gets one shot. 160 HP is big, but 160 is starting to become a number that most decks are gunning for. So I don't see how you're going to get this powered up, unfortunately. It's a shame because it looks cool, but it's just too expensive. And that's the downside, really. There is a Salamence in this set as well. It does take, lots of energy, as Salamence usually does, but it does have 3 attacks, which is not something you see very often at this stage of the game. 4 retreat on this as well, though, good lord. Same 160 HP as the Dragonite we just looked at, so at least it's fairly tanky. Yeah, that's about as best I can say for it. 1 fire energy, 60 damage, discard stadium in play. That's pretty decent, but again, on the stage 2, ugh. 1 water, 2 colorless, not even the same attack cost as the first one. 20 damage for every card in the opponent's hand. That's not great. Most of the time the opponent's only going to have a couple of cards left in their hand at the end of the turn, so barf. And then 2 fire, a water, and a colorless for 170, but you got to discard 3 energy on this thing as well. Why would you play this instead of Black Shaymin-EX? Is the thing at that point, right? It's even in fire, so you would have to play Emboar instead of Blastoise for it here, and just turbo buff. It looks cool, but man, oh man, it's not great. The EXs are a little bit more impressive though. Latios EX, 170 HP, 2 retreat, so again, lower end of standard for EX stuff here. But Fast Raid is a really interesting attack. For one Psychic it does 40, but if you go first you can use this on your first turn. Yeah, donks are back. If you put a Muscle Band on this thing it does 60, and that can be enough to KO most evolving basics. So yeah, you can donk some Pikachus I guess in the Raichu deck, or donk some foolish Zubats in play as well, which is pretty interesting. Good against Night March, so it's got a reasonable enough matchup there. Light Pulse is something, because of double Dragon Energy, you might actually be able to get into. For a Water, 2 Psychic and a Colorless, it is 110, and then prevents all effects of attacks except damage done to this Pokemon next turn. So I guess that's cool. You don't get like random Paralyze or anything, which is pretty fun. 110 is just enough to KO Shaymin, so if you Lysander, then that's the thing. And Latios really is a Shaymin hunting deck, because the Mega goes up to 220 HP, and its one attack is Sonic Ace. For a Water, a Psychic, and a Colorless, you discard 2 energy on the Latios, and do 120 to one of the opponent's Pokemon. So put a double Dragon Energy on this thing, discard the double Dragon Energy, snipe a Shaymin off the bench, take 2 prizes. That's really what this is going for. Remember that we have Target Whistle in the Phantom Forces set, so you can actually bring back that Shaymin and snipe it down again. That's the idea. This deck just preys on that. Otherwise, like against Night March, they do often have to play Shaymin down, but you can also just kill the guys at the front, which is pretty good, so that can be okay. It's a bit of an unfavorable trade situation, so you've got to be quick in that match, but it's not the worst. And yeah, basically every deck is going to have to play at least one Shaymin, so you might well be able to just snip them with that. With some damage mod stuff going down as well, you can also get to one-shot numbers if you need to, but just the early game pressure of this can be nice as well. So yeah, I have a deck for it. Don't know if we'll see it, but decent enough, I guess. Mega Ray is what we're going to be looking at in just a sec, but the regular Dragon Ray has got 180 HP, 30 damage for a DCE, meh, and then 2 Fire, a Lightning, and a Colorless to do 130, and if Tails, you can't do that Dragon Strike attack next turn. Fine, I guess. It's certainly no like Rayquaza from Dragon's Exalted, but we'll take it, because it does go into the Goliath 230 HP Mega Ray EX over here. This is some serious Charizard vibes over this one, but it has a couple of advantages. One, it actually has a Spirit Link, which is good. 2, it now has double Dragon Energy. I know the other the Charizard now does as well, but it's awkward because Charizard EX is not Dragon. And 3, it only discards 2 energy with its dumb attack. It has the Delta Wild trait, so any damage done to this Ray by Grass, Fire, Water, or Lightning Pokemon is reduced by 20. An inbuilt Hard Charm is pretty solid, to be honest, and against a lot of good decks too. And yeah, for 3 Fire, a Colorless, and a Lightning, you do 300 damage and then discard 2 energy. It's hard to power up at the moment, but there is a world where this is usable. I'm not sure if we're in that world, to be fair, but like Ember, I guess, Ember Mega Ray could be a thing. I don't think it's fast enough to compete with what we have, which is the sad part, but yeah, 300 damage, can't really complain at that, right? If you're going against other EX decks, you are going to win out more often than not, so yeah. There's some other support it has here, though, that maybe you don't have to play the Ember stuff for it. Hydreigon EX lets you retreat Dragon Pokemon for 2 colorless less if you have a Stadium card in play. If the opponent has a Stadium card in play, you still retreat for 2 less, so that's nice. Then, sometimes this attack can come up because of double Dragon Energy. Psychic Dark Colorless, 80 damage, Shred, is unaffected by any effects, so I guess if Safeguard comes back, you could get around that. So yeah, it's fine. Problem is Hydreigon itself is a free energy retreat, so you probably have to have 2 of these on the bench in order to take best advantage of it, so that's annoying, but it's fine. You can work with it. The main thing this is building up to is using Reshiram over here. For, you know, its attack is kind of bad, but like Turbo Blaze lets you accelerate a fire energy from your hand to one of your Dragon Pokemon, so long as this is active. That's the key annoying part for this, but we'll get there. Its attack is not amazing, 2 fire, lightning, colorless, only 110 discard of fire from this Pokemon. I guess it can at least one-shot Shaymin, but you're putting 4 energy on this thing to do that. Blah. The good news for Reshiram is that it has a 2 energy retreat, so if you do play Hydreigon, then you can retreat for free, maybe get 2 attaches and start getting the Mega Ray built up. It's fine, but again, it might be just a little bit too slow, and I think you need some serious backup plan for this as well, because these attacks are all too expensive and none of this does anything to Night March, and it's not really compatible with like Latios or anything here either, so I think there needs to be something big that you can do to the Marchers to make this work. I'm not really sure what is the thing. Dragons do tend to be a bit inflexible that way, unfortunately, and the fact that it only accelerates to dragons, I don't know what else you can even play alongside that. I would have to have a look, basically. Zekrom, I guess, is maybe something you could do, but it's also turbo bad. For 1 lightning, it does 30, and then attaches a basic energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon, which is super obnoxious. And 1 fire, 2 lightning, and the colorless is just a flat 100 damage. So that one does not one-shot Shaymin, and that makes it even worse. But I suppose there is a world where maybe this is your Night March answer, but it doesn't even KO Pumpkaboo in 1 hit, so I don't know if that's viable. I don't think the deck comes together as the thing. Then there needs to be something else that you can do in Dragon to deal with like Pumpkaboo and stuff. The fact that it's all fire and lightning means you can't even do like an Yveltal or something here, so I'm not sure. We'd have to look into it, but it's a cool enough deck, but it certainly isn't going to compete with the meta stuff here. And then I think the only other colorless Pokemon that's truly worth noting is potentially Skarmory, because for 1 colorless you can search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon, put them onto the bench, and blow through for a DC you can do 60 if there's a stadium in play, which there should be in colorless because Skyfield. It's fine, nothing too spectacular. There's a couple of stuff like the Swallow has Delta Plus but only does 50 damage with 3 energy, so I guess it's good at killing Joltik and whatnot with DCE, but that's still expensive. And the Unpheasant's got Delta Evolution, but these are like the worst attacks I've ever had in my life, so yeah. Flip a coin if Tails this does nothing. For 3 energy, only 120 damage too. But wait! If you use Feather Dance to turn prior and don't get killed or gusted, you can do 80 more next turn. 200 over 2 turns. It's not even doubling his damage output. Magnificent. Printed on the card, everyone will play it. Except they won't, because they are smarter than you. Oh boy, this one is a humongous set to go through, really. Like, it doesn't seem like it because there's only about 110 unique cards in this set, and that's including the secrets down here. But the impact this set has is unparalleled. We're not going to necessarily see too many of the attackers come out here. I'm going to probably try and play Latios. I'm pretty sure Ray is going to see play because Pepper's probably going to want to play it. Or is trying to make it work anyway. And, you know, the dragon stuff you could conceive of here. The rest of it I don't think is going to see much, but you can't underestimate how good this silly little hedgehog is over here. And that's where we're at. It is absolutely immense how much this is going to change the game. And yeah, just stay tuned for that, I suppose. If you've somehow made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching. I do hope you found it informative. And yeah, until next time when we actually do battle with these. Or talk about rotation, one of the two. Rotation's coming up as well, and that's a humongous one. Yeah, until next time, take care.